If you do it, we'll give you a wheelbarrow full of bull organs. Lo and behold, 2 days later, he passed the container in mint condition.
Hi, I'm Tyler Folsom, a nuclear engineer with a little over 10 years of experience in the commercial nuclear power industry, from engineering to operations to emergency response. I don't claim to know everything there is nuclear, but I can certainly share some knowledge. Today we're going to be looking at another video by the hilarious Sam O'Nella Academy called Tarare, the Hungriest Man in History. Alleged this person could eat without any restriction at all, none of that little impulse to tell you to stop. That's from what I've heard anyway. I'm sure Sam will enlighten me more. Let's take a look.
Hey kids, I think we can all agree that there are few pastimes more grotesque than competitive eating. The concept of a bunch of guys pushing their anatomy to its limits just for sport leaves a bad taste in my mouth in more ways than one. But imagine if these men didn't adopt this habit just for fun. Imagine if some gross biological error forced them to eat like this for their entire life. Introducing Tarare.
Wow.
Tarare was born in France around 1772 to a poor farming family. It's said that his appetite was so voracious that, by his teens, Tarare could eat an entire quarter of a cow carcass in a single day. You'd think he'd be like mega obese, but no, he only weighed 100 pounds by age 17. However, there were still a few things that stood out about Tarare appearance-wise. For one, he had a huge, stretched-out mouth with horribly stained teeth. He could reportedly fit 12 eggs in his cheeks at once, much like a chipmunk keeping its chipmunk eggs warm. Additionally, when Tarare was full, he'd get a crazy octomom gut going, and any other time, he'd have a huge flap of stretched out skin hanging around his waist. He also stank to high hell, even by 18th century French peasant standards. He was described as reeking, quote, to such a degree that he could not be endured within the distance of 20 paces. Wow. So between all this and his horrendous outhouse flooding dumps, his family had had enough. Alright, you're eating us out of house and home here. You gotta go, man. You heard me. Kick bricks, Froggy. Wow, he just called a French person a frog. That's so racist. No, it's not. They're all French. The guy just looks like a frog about. Oh. Well, too late. I'm already offended. That's fair. Dislike. After leaving home, Tarare was forced to beg and steal just to satisfy his gargantuan appetite. Inevitably, people began to take notice of him, and eventually he landed a job as a street performer in Paris.
That's crazy. You know what else has the ability to just keep going without an impulse naturally? Well, that's nuclear reactions. 100% power in a nuclear power plant is fairly arbitrary and largely came up with more of a restriction based on the metallurgy of, say, the reactor vessel, various components in the secondary plant as well, as far as how many megawatts can this thing comfortably operate within safe margins. But the neutrons, the things actually causing the nuclear reactions in the reactor, you can ask them. They're not going to be able to tell you what 100% power is. That's entirely controlled by the reactor operators, and it will go up if you give it the opportunity to. You just give it enough fuel, give it enough reactivity. Think of reactivity as acceleration of the nuclear reactor. Can continue to grow until you just use up all the fuel. So a lot of the restrictions are just based on what the entire system is comfortable operating at, because nuclear power plants, you want to get up to 100% and just keep it there for as long as possible, because they're solid base load power systems. The limit on a reactor is not based on what the neutrons can do. This isn't the only thing I've heard it with. I've heard that for some of the new sports cars, the speed limit on those, like the Bugatti Veyron, for instance, the limit associated with that is based on the tires, not how powerful the engine is. So you can kind of use that same analogy there.
Would hand Tarare entire baskets of apples, eggs, and even wine corks, and watch in delight as he horked them down without the slightest hesitation. Normally this went off without a hitch, except for one time when he suffered a severe intestinal blockage.
Ooh, no.
Fortunately, the crowd was kind enough to carry him to the hospital, where he was treated with the strongest laxatives the 18th century had to offer. I would draw what happened next, but it would probably get my channel deleted, so let's just picture it for a few moments. Moving on. Cut to the year 1792.
Can only imagine.
This marks the beginning of the War of the First Coalition. Ever heard of it? Me neither. Who was in it? Fucking everyone. Anyway, Tarare decided to enlist in the war. After all, maybe that profound emptiness he was feeling was just a lack of purpose in life. Turns out, no, he really was just psychotically hungry. Even after being granted quadruple rations, Tarare would still be digging through the trash pile whenever he got the chance. After suffering extreme exhaustion, he was sent off to the military hospital in Unsuccessful. The staff
What I just say to point out is France is also one of the countries that has the most amount of nuclear power plants in terms of percentage of their energy production. So it's interesting a guy with a nuclear appetite is in what will later be the nuclear country.
there were so dumbfounded by the man's abilities that they decided to keep him there to run a few experiments. The first of which involved putting Tarare in a room with a meal prepared for 15 people. Naturally, he ate the entire thing and immediately fell asleep. Next, they presented him with a raw eel.
Power.
In response, Tarare crushed the eel's skull between his teeth before slurping down the entire creature in one go. Now, this is hair-clenchingly horrifying for a couple of reasons. Firstly, he put a whole frickin' eel in his stomach, but secondly, there had to be some point during digestion where the meat was gone but the bones still remained. Now, for those of you who don't know, an eel skeleton looks like this. That means Tarare had all of those needle-sized ribs stabbing into the walls of his stomach at once, and he was fine. He also ripped a live cat apart with his bare hands, drank its blood, and ate everything but its bones, and then later gagged up the fur and skin like an owl, but
horrible.
You know, that's neither here nor there. After reviewing our data, I've come to the scientific conclusion that, yeah, we got a goddamn demon on our hands. But as we all know, with great devour comes great responsibility.
Yeah, so nuclear appetite, apparently nuclear containment structure being his belly. Though one thing that's interesting is if that humans were really nuclear powered, you wouldn't need much food. It would be like, take one small pill and you wouldn't need to eat for 20 years or something like that, just considering how energy dense this pill would be, and it would keep you going. You also wouldn't need to sleep at all. That would be a little out there, but you wouldn't get to enjoy tasting good food. So I'm not advocating for nuclear powered people. I think that would be a little too crazy.
Since Tarare was still technically enlisted, the military decided to utilize his abilities for the greater good. Hey Tarare, it's me, the General. Listen, could you eat this box with a note in it for me? If you do it, we'll give you a wheelbarrow full of bull organs. Lo and behold, 2 days later, he passed the container in mint condition and was given his reward as promised. With this proof of concept, they made him an official spy and sent him into Prussia with a document in his belly to be delivered to an imprisoned French colonel. Unfortunately, there are a couple of things Tarare couldn't do that are generally important when sneaking into another country. A, he couldn't speak German, and B, it's pretty hard to maintain a low profile when you're running around like a madman, wolfing down garbage and mutilating small animals. So he ended up being captured by the enemy. Initially, he kept his mouth shut, for once, but after a whipping and a day in jail, Tarare gave in. After confessing that he did, in fact, have vital intelligence snaking its way through his GI tract, the Prussians chained him to a latrine until the box emerged 30 hours later. The note wasn't actually anything important, so they just mock executed him, gave him a severe beating, and sent him on his way. After all that, Tarare returned to life at the hospital, desperate for a cure for his condition, but nothing they ever tried worked.
Tobacco pills, opium, yeah, I use that a lot. Juice cleanse, juice cleanse, a bit early for that. Oh wow, IRL 4. No, wow.
Meanwhile, the man's endless hunger continued to get him into all sorts of trouble. He'd often sneak out of the hospital to eat the scraps behind the local butcher and fight stray dogs in the alley for their precious garbage. He'd also seek out patients undergoing bloodletting in order to take all their life juice for himself. On several occasions, he was even caught attempting to eat bodies in the mortuary. By this point in my research, I was so desensitized to this guy that I didn't even bat an eye when I first read that. I was just like, alright. Guess he must have been hungry. Anyway, the hospital staff begrudgingly tolerated Tarare's buffoonery, until one day when he went too far. Well, Tarare, you've only had 3 mess hall raids, 4 miscellaneous trash-related mishaps, and 1 cadaver defiling, so I'd say, so far, this week's been pretty good. Doctor, we should probably inform you that a 14-month-old child has gone missing from their room.
Oh no. Oh no.
Tarare, look at me. Did you eat a fucking baby? Tarare was promptly kicked out of the hospital and spent 4 years out and about doing, whatever horrific shit you can imagine. When he came back, he was suffering from advanced
my God.
tuberculosis and died shortly after arrival. During his autopsy, the surgeons found that when they looked into his mouth, they could see all the way down his throat and into his stomach cavity. As you can imagine, his whole abdominal region was profoundly deformed. Basically, if this is a normal human, this is what they found inside Tarare.
Wow. That is crazy to think about such a thing.
Like the man's mind, we can see that around 90% is devoted towards food and 10% towards everything else. So, moral of the story here is that, no, you know what, not even I can find anything resembling a moral here. Not all stories have a point to them. Sometimes they're just sad and disgusting from beginning to end.
Alright, I'm going to take back what I said about this guy having a nuclear analogy. That would not be good PR for the nuclear industry, or really anyone involved on both sides of the things, just because of how horrific that is. But I just feel bad for the guy. Well, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.